This week, we are joined by the head women's lacrosse coach at the University of Maryland, Cathy Reese. Thank you for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
One of the news this past weekend, Corey Edmonds had passed you the all-time goals list. Is that something you were aware of? Was she aware of that? And then what was the conversations you had with her after the game?
I was only made aware from our game announcers from my meeting with them the day before. They said, if Corey scores, whatever. I said, no, I have no idea. But after the game, and I told her, I'm like, I just need you to keep climbing, girl. Like, let's go. If we can get you up into those, keep climbing. That's only going to help the 26 Terps. So proud of her. She had a great game. Was limited in shot opportunities against Syracuse, but came out huge for us against Virginia. So, she's off and running and is a huge part of our offense and will be as we go through the season.
Yeah, obviously, you guys just moved up to the third ranking earlier this morning. What from your eyes, obviously Corey Edmonds had played very well, as you mentioned, on this past weekend, but what from your eyes through two games has worked really well for you guys?
Well, I think we're developing, we're really, our chemistry is growing. It's building. I thought we did an excellent job against Virginia on the draw. That led to more possessions. I think our defense has been playing great in both games. We've made some mistakes, so we're learning from them. We're making those adjustments. And I love how balanced we are on the offensive end scoring. Our numbers and statistics are really balanced all the way through. We saw some great things from everybody that was out there. And so two huge wins. We lost to both of these teams last year. And so for us to kind of have this crossover with the ACC and walk away with 2 wins, I'm just really proud of our effort and grit and how we were able to pull them out.
It seems, I don't want to speak for you necessarily, but it seems the transfer portal, you made a point to try to bring in some offensive talent, and it seems through two games you've kind of had an abundance of that. What have you seen from some of the transfers you brought in on the offensive side, and was that a goal coming into this season?
Well, we lost Chrissy Thomas and Kate Seitz off the offensive end, and that were really you had contributors, significant contributors. But to bring in Kristen and Keely, they both are very different players, but just bring in a just sense of calmness and confidence and leadership. And that was really what we were looking for, right? To help kind of guide this offense. We were young last year. You have a lot of last year freshmen and Kayla Gilmore and Emma and Devin and Shelby and a lot of, people that were playing on the offensive end as freshmen. So just kind of have, two players come in that have this high level collegiate experience at playing at two really good programs to just be able to come in and lead our offense has been really effective and helpful. Even a Lauren LaPointe who played significantly more as the season went on last year, but, just putting in Keely and Kristen around the Kaylas and the Emmas and the Devins and alongside Corey, it's just helped our leadership just take on a different level.
Before we get back to the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor. The Catalyst to the Game is brought to you by Catalyst Hot Dogs. Catalyst brought the Jersey Dog to the DMV, featuring premium dry-aged Black Angus all-beef hot dogs made in Maryland, served with handmade toppings including hot onions, relish, and their signature Texas chili sauce. And don't miss their original garlic knot dogs. Catalyst always offers vegan dogs as well as gluten-free buns. Shout out gluten-free buns, because Catalyst has food for everyone. Find them in CQ Stadium in Section 14 and the Xfinity Center in Section 210. Tell the people a hot dog is a sandwich. All right, now here is more Under the Shell. Another part that's been successful so far is JJ Soriano and net. Her career, obviously, playing last year and then coming and stepping up and taking another step this year. What have you kind of seen from her improvement as she's, every game she plays, it seems she gets just a bit better?
Yeah, well, you said it, right? Like, JJ was a freshman last year as well, right? She redshirted her first year at Maryland. So last year was her freshman season. And to be a goalie and, seeing the amazing shooters that are competing at the schools that we play against, her eyes were wide open last year, right? And she learned a lot as the season went on, but to have that year under her belt and to come back this year, know what she's capable of. She's got a team around her that is trying to, play our style of defense that Laurie Kennis and Nadine Hagnaghi are working to put our group in to, limit opportunities and force shots from certain places. And that allows JJ to be successful. So that whole team effort defensively, led by her, is kind of the anchoring us on the defensive end. She's had a really good 2 games so far. And so, she's just, I'm proud of her growth and excited for what's ahead. I think she's not even near her ceiling as a goalkeeper, and it's going to be fun to watch over her career.
Cathy, I wanted to ask, this year's team, obviously, a ton of potential on it, right? You obviously have a returning talent, stuff like that. Next year, though, you have the number one player in the class coming in, who also happens to be your daughter. Can you just tell us a little bit? You've coached here for so long, right? And you have these teams that, always come through. And I'd imagine each year is a unique year, right? But you talk to coaches who have their sons or daughters play for them, and they really say it almost like forces them to like take a step back to realize how cool that is. Have you thought about that at all? Like the chance to coach your daughter and what that'll mean for not only you and her, but just kind of the Reese family and overall like an appreciation for what your career has brought you.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. And I probably haven't really taken all that in as much as I will once she steps foot on campus. But I will say, even starting with my older boys, right, for them to have the chance to play for Coach Tillman and those guys on the men's program, it's been something that has been so cool to watch. They're not only just growing into great players, but they're a part of one of the best teams in the country and play for the best coaching staff in the country. And they're really just loving their experience at Maryland. And so, for me to have the chance to have my daughter come in, she plays for my husband now in high school. So he's had the chance to coach all of them. He's coached both the boys and has coached her. And I've just never had that opportunity. But excited for what she brings. She's grown up around Maryland lacrosse. She's grown up a Terp. She has so many awesome people that she's looked up to throughout, her kind of youth until where she is now. And for her to have a chance to put on a Maryland uniform and have that experience as well is something does make me a little emotional. I'm just really excited for her. She's a great player. She's competitive. She's talented. And so I know that she has what it takes to come in and contribute to Maryland and help us continue our quest for Big Ten and national championships.
What's it like recruiting your daughter? As the pitch, I'd imagine, is probably a little easier than it might be for a typical number one recruit. Is it kind of like I'd imagine you obviously have to tell her about, certain things, but is it one of those where you don't need to be talking or harping on it at the dinner table every night? It can kind of be like a little bit of a, elephant in the room type situation. Tell us what it's like recruiting, a player that's the caliber of your daughter, but also your daughter.
No, that's funny. It was interesting because it's like early on, in the summer before we're allowed to contact recruits of September 1st of their junior year. So that summer leading up to it is a really big, there's a lot of recruiting opportunities, right? And kids are out there playing and she's playing and everything. And I'm like, if you really want to go somewhere different, you need to let me know so I can tell people, because it's just an awkward thing, right? I think there's probably an assumption that she was going to go to Maryland, but of course she could have a lot of opportunities ahead of her for sure. And so when we hit September 1st, I think I sent her a text at midnight probably. And then, probably it's an illegal home visit, I guess, because I'm in her home at midnight. But the next day, we were getting ready for some Zooms with some of the other 26 recruits. And so put her on just to check it out. And we were going through things. And she's like, can I just be done? Like, I'm coming to Maryland, let's move on and do this. So it was unique, but she did hear from some other places and was able to have some conversations too. But it's just a different journey. Everybody's recruiting journey is a little bit different, and hers was unique for sure. But I'm just really excited and confident in her and her decision to come here, and just the opportunities that are going to be available for her to kind of achieve all of her dreams at the University of Maryland.
Right. The NCAA, they gotta make sure that those home visits, you be careful.
Texting, I'm like, I got you at midnight. I can't,
texting your daughter could be a violation, apparently.
I assume that's nice for her perspective. You kind of mentioned it from the recruiting process where she's like, what, I'm just ready to be done with this. As a lot of number one recruits in the country are probably hearing from so many different schools. And from her perspective, it's like, I kind of already know where I'm going. Like my hands are off. I can still just focus on improving my game instead of having these outside distractions about where I'm going to go, these camps I'm going to play and try to get recruited. I assume from her perspective, it was kind of a weight off her shoulders once she decided, okay, I'm coming to Maryland. Like everything flows more naturally, obviously, because of your relationship.
I hope, and it was one of these things too, where, had she not, we're recruiting her. I mean, she's a great fit for the Terps. And so it's a decision that is a parent, you want your daughter to have the experience to go through and try to figure out, what lies ahead for them. But for her too, with her two brothers here and having grown up around Maryland lacrosse, like this is something she's really passionate about and, ready to compete for championships and ready to be a part of this, this team and and on the journey here. And so, everything is what it is. She's got a senior season ahead of her. She just wrapped up basketball season. They just, won the basketball championship. And so that kind of chapter closes, and we look for lacrosse and see what they can do this spring. They won the championship last year. So we'll see what Brian and Kaden can do this spring as far as getting it going again.
Speaking of recruiting, I wanted to ask you how you have seen recruiting shift in a non-rev sport like women's lacrosse since the introduction of NIL and now revenue sharing. Obviously, you guys are one of the more premier programs, I would say, across all non-rev sports here at Maryland. And you got the new facility, stuff like that. So it's clear the university is investing money into the program. But I do want to ask, I know Missy Mahar has sometimes talked about the differences that non-rev sports will now face, that there's revenue sharing and NIL is such a big deal. How has it impacted your program? And how do you feel about the future of kind of these non-rev sports and what the NCAA might have to do to preserve, I think, some of the concerns that people have?
Yeah, well, I think the concerns are valid, right? I feel like there's still so many unknowns. We're just really entering into the rev share times, and we've had a change in administration here when Damon left and Jim came in, and just kind of the approach to the whole rev share and to NIL revenue generation and stuff like that, it's just been a little different. So things are settling, but when you go out and recruit, we're all just operating, it's not an even playing field anymore. We're all operating with different resources, with different numbers of scholarships, maybe with different NIL money, that some schools are able to give more money to get kids to come, and their packages are different. So I just think as we start to work forward through this, we're just all operating with different resources. And so a lot of this will develop over time. And as we go and we see kind of where we are, what we're competing against, and a lot of people don't even know, you don't know what other schools have. You can hear things through the grapevine, but it's very different when you're a part of a school that's opted in to this rev share thing and a school that hasn't. We're limited by roster numbers now, which changes the way that you do things. You got to maybe take smaller classes to hold opportunities for kids coming out of the transfer portal. So it really just shifts a lot of your thinking and everything that you're doing. But I think for us, fortunate here at Maryland, being lacrosse at Maryland, with a great leadership group that is committed to our non-revenue sports and helping us still remain competitive and remain at the top of the group. And so I have confidence in that, but you don't really know what everybody's so different, right? You just don't really know what you're even going up against.
Do you have any concerns about programs, maybe not even at Maryland, other programs being able to keep a program like women's lacrosse as the years move forward?
Yeah, I do, because I think there's going to be, you don't really know what the shift in the landscape of all of it's going to look like, right? As more money gets funneled into certain sports, they could cut certain sports to save money to try to replace that. You guys are seeing all the things that are coming out on Twitter with athletic departments and where they are and how much money sports are losing and stuff. And I just think there's probably a lot of pieces that go into the decisions for the powers that be at each institution to do what they need to do financially to run their programs, their athletic departments the way they are. So I do think there's a concern. I do think with women's lacrosse, we are actually still adding programs, which has been pretty cool. In our tournament, we're up to 29 teams in the NCAA tournament. So our sport is bigger, and we're getting more exposure, and there's more television opportunities. You can see Big Ten Network and ESPN and ESPN Plus and Big Ten. We're picking up so many games, and so the exposure's out there. Lacrosse on the horizon, hitting the Olympics in 2028 is a new kind of vision and feel for the sport too. So we're just in unique times, right? I don't think people predicted this to be this way it is. And now we've got to figure out kind of where we're headed for NCAA, for each of the sports individually and stuff too. But yes, I know there's a concern about schools continuing to sponsor all the sports that they do. But lacrosse itself women's lacrosse is positioning themselves to be a really, attractive sport for schools to have.
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned it, how the landscape will change, whether it'll be cutting programs or maybe having different rules around the number of players you can have on your team. Some of those cuts might come as well. I want to ask you also, earlier mentioned your two sons obviously playing on the men's team here. How do you balance kind of following that team, staying up with your sons while also having time to coach the women's team here?
Well, just really proud of both of them. They're both just they're they're doing great. They're having a great time. Great leaders, great teammates, and just doing everything they need to do. It's hard. What I miss sometimes being at their games, it's just tough when we cross over. But so far, my husband and I drove up to Syracuse on Friday. I practiced in the morning and then got in the car and drove 5.5 hours up, watched the game, and drove 5.5 hours back and played Virginia the next day. And so sometimes you just kind of do what you need to do to make it work. We play this week, Wednesday and Friday, and the men play Princeton on Saturday. So I get to go to that game. So it's really nice when it works out. But they're surrounded by just such great teammates and families. And again, their coaching staff, there's no one better. And so I love how much they're loving Maryland. That makes me really happy. It is pretty cool this year. We're redoing our field at Field Hockey Lax. So we're playing our games in the football stadium. And so, I do run into them more often over there, whether they like it or not. I'm just like, oh, hey, they come out to practice after us. And so we do cross paths more than normal for this season. But, our men's team is so good. They're so strong and fun to watch. And so I'm excited to see kind of how their season goes this year and support them in any way I can.
Cathy, I wanted to ask, your team has had a lot of success, in the regular season of recent years and in the tournament. But I think, everyone knows that you guys are defined on how you do in the postseason, right? You've set that standard for yourself. It hasn't necessarily, lived up to that in recent years. You guys haven't won a championship, in the past couple of seasons since 2019, I believe. What do you think it is that's prevented you guys from making it to the championship, making it to that semifinal round? And how do you think you can go about, not only this year, but as you continue to get further and further in your coaching tenure, kind of get back to the pinnacle of the sport?
Yeah, well, obviously we're trying, and trying to get there every year, and it's tough. Our sport is tough. Like I said, teams are adding and growing, and some teams are funded differently right now. So it opens up the doors for recruiting classes to go different directions. For us after COVID, when everything kind of shut down, one of the things that I think is really special about Maryland lacrosse is our culture and our chemistry and how much we rely on each other and lean on each other. And during COVID, everyone was a little bit more separated, right? We had to kind of keep distances. You couldn't do that. And so we had to rebuild that for our year in 20. So 20 was canceled, 21 was Big Ten only. In 22, it started, and we were back in the Final Four in 22. Is it 22? Yeah, 3, 4, 5. And so we fell short, obviously, of getting back to that Final Four and competing with that. But, our chemistry is where it needs to be. Our culture is where it is. These girls love each other. They're passionate about lacrosse and Maryland and playing together and working their tails off to be the best they can. I think we put in this year a lot more work outside of practice. They came in at a different level, just as far as the controllables like stick work and fitness and that kind of stuff. So that's been really helpful as our foundation was a little stronger than it's been in years past and a little higher. But I do think our landscape of our sport is changing, right? Like there's a lot more teams adding and playing, and the resources and the funding of different places are, like I said, different everywhere you go. And so nothing's easy. It's hard to win. And so far where we are at 2-0 in the season against two tough ACC opponents, we're grinding right now, and these guys, we got 2 more games this week. We just got to keep our foot on the gas and keep getting better and worry about taking things one game at a time. And it is hard because there's a lot of just expectations at Maryland for lacrosse, for both the men and the women, is that we're expected to be in the Final Four. And some of it's on ourselves. We do it to ourselves. Because of our history, we were at like 12 of 13 in a row at one point, competing in the Final Four, and we'll have won 5 national championships out of 20 coaching here. And so it's a lot of pressure and expectation, but we do it to ourselves, but we want to be at that level. And so, I know if you ask any of our girls, that's what we're shooting for. But at the same time, the way that we get there is by doing things one day at a time and one game at a time. And so important that we stay in the present and don't get too far ahead of ourselves. But those losses in the round of 16 are just not where we want to be. And so we'll get there when we get there. But first things first, we got to look to go 1-0 on Wednesday against, Caitlin, who coached here for 12 years or whatever it was, forever, who I adore, and her assistant, Alice Mercer, who I adore. So it's we're going to get another tough game on Wednesday. And that's how this season is. We play a really hard schedule, but we've got to look to bring it, go 1-0 every time we play.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to watching you throughout the rest of the season, and good luck on the road this week.
Thank you.